Yeah. Hello everyone and welcome to Masters. And this is going to be about Alexei Shirov, Fire on the Board. Now, of course, everybody knows about Alexei Shirov, and if you don't, then you're gonna find out. Now, he is a very famous grandmaster from the 90s, and his chess style kind of reminiscent of his trainer slash coach. Does anybody know who he was coached by? Or at least had a bit of an association, even just a little bit by proxy even. Because if you think Alexei Shirov, you're not thinking of the slow poke grinds and wins with slow chess, and that is correct. That is Michal Tal, right? He actually worked a little bit with Michal Tal. He is from Latvia, that is correct. So he had a bit of that. Jordan? No. We're not talking about the Dutch chess team this time. We're talking about a legendary player. So, Shirov is a very, very strong player. And talented players actually thrive, and then they don't necessarily stagnate that quickly. In fact, like 2-3 years ago, Shirov almost qualified to the candidates, and that's actually quite an achievement because, you know, he's not the youngster he once was, but he's still very, very plenty strong. Now, if you remember my last lesson, which was probably 4.5 years ago. But then he remembers, I can tell from his looks. So, yeah. Watching all the classes. Hello there. Now, the funny thing about that. Yeah, I know. So the funny thing about this one, that if you remember my last class from 4.5 years ago, you know what opening this will be. So e4, e5, a little bit of a sneak peek. And this first one is between Shirov and Atalik. So e4, e5. Well, how would you peg Shirov? Would you peg him the classical type? Playing classical main variations in chess? Yes, he does play the classical main lines. He's always been the one trying to play the best, if possible. And in fact, Tal is sort of misunderstood because Tal has a lot of fans, but those fans are sort of so mesmerized by Tal and Tal's fantastic play, they have actually no idea who the real Tal was. Because the real Tal actually knew a lot, played well, and analyzed the game so well, he actually had ideas in main openings as well. In fact, plenty of them have been reinvented due to him, and he was sort of the source of inspiration. So back to the game. Of course, Shirov does not flinch, never mouse slips, puts the bishop on b5 and plays the Spanish. So a6, bishop a4, knight f6, bishop e7, key 1, c3, d6, no d5, this time d6. h3, here, here. Now, what was my last lesson about? It's a trick question. You might remember. Okay, so this obviously is the Chigorin. And this is going to deviate. Last time we discussed a different top chess player. He's known for his spidey senses. Who is he? That should give away. That should be a big giveaway. It is not Karpov, but the man from Cornwall. Wow. Chet went absolute silent. All right, all right. Adams, finally. Got it. They got it. Indeed, Mickey Adams. We looked at a fairly similar game, but there will be a deviation this time. So Shirov plays d4. Of course, you should always occupy the center if given the chance. Knight d2. Now here, obviously, d5 is an option, especially as black commits the bishop on b7. Knight d2, c takes, rook c8. And this is the last chance for you to redeem yourself, chat, because you should guess what Shirov played in this position. And it's not going to shock you. Not at all. Maybe a little bit. If the memory of the Mickey Adams game against Arnason starts haunting you at this moment, it might actually confuse you, but I don't think that's big danger right now. However, if it doesn't, you can have a guess of what white can play here. G4, okay. A G4, that'd be a bit aggressive. Okay, it would fit in a Shirovian style, but there's a point of crazy chess, but not that crazy. D5 makes sense. Any other ideas? Knight f1. He goes d5. But knight f1 is just as fine. It's actually very typical. So d5, he goes knight f1. Now, knight b3 was played in the Mickey Adams Arnason game, but Shirov just goes with the standard knight f1. Now, we get into a very interesting position here. Black clearly isn't following all the rules that we may learn early, putting all them knights on the rim, but there is an upside for black. It's a close position, and black may eventually start rolling pawns on that side of the board. Hello, Dirk. What does white have in exchange? Apart from the fact that black does have a clear plan. What did Shirov gain? We got a space, yes, of course. We've got the center and the space. What else we've got and what black sort of doesn't? coordination. So our piece is a little bit better. Not everything's completely coordinated yet for us either. But for black, some things are just off. The bishop on b7 is still pretty bad. This is pretty bad over there. We could sort of say the same thing with our bishop. It's a very strong piece, but it's a little loose. So it's going to be an issue. So goes knight c4. And that's for exactly when you notice that you have some bad pieces, you're trying to improve upon them. So knight c4 tries to do just that. Okay, so this is practically where the game starts. You sort of want to figure out, okay, well now, fantastic. We survived the opening, but what now? What to do at this very moment? Because space in general is something that can help you move forward, but it's not going to win you the game. This was played in Darga Tal. Yep, Tal keeps popping up. I mean, Tal was always a very innovative player. An aggressive one at that. Knight e3. So when you have the extra space, in general, you don't want to trade. Because we just said, oh, the go here trades, black already sort of eases their troubles. That knight that was an issue there is traded off. And yes, we get to get a bishop out, so there are some upsides, but it's a knight less that they have to worry with and worry about.
What about bishop d3?
Bishop d3 I like. Just pressing on the knight.
Yeah, hoping that we can win a pawn if we're not playing a grandmaster.
Oh, okay. That's okay. Like, setting up ideas and tricks, there's a bit of a hate going around for setting up tricks and traps, but even one of the better players, I mean, not the best, Kasparov is the best, but there are some tricksters around, very strong 2800 plus tricksters that love tricks. And there's nothing wrong with tricks because it's a form of winning a game. So there's nothing wrong with this. The only issue with bishop d3 is that it may eventually invite the knight jump. Even knight h2, okay, but then again, remember, once you make a move, what's even more important is how your opponent is going to react. So just like as bishop d3 and knight here, and there is knight f4, and you may notice that black, even though had knights that were kind of flimsy on the side, they got some good spots, and not sure we want to do that trade. Because if we do that trade, this knight that didn't really have a good place to drop actually has one. This bishop that used to be quite bad gets an open diagonal to work with. So you can actually see that from a static position that looked like a stable advantage, we made a couple of moves. I mean, this one is more of the dubious decision. Knight h2 by in itself might not be tragic, but you might even consider black being slightly better, or at least comfortable. And that kind of shows that, just because you have the advantage does not mean it's going to last that long if you don't follow up with a sound plan. And in the spirit Oh, knight e5, okay. But you may actually donate too much. Ah, okay. All right. So it's true if I take here, you take back. But just as quickly as Aditya would take a Coke, if he sees one, we may as well grab that c2 bishop if we see it's hanging. The thing is, I might just move this. Okay, so yeah, all these pawn pushes are fun to do, but you need to have a target. So, you know, you always have to have a target there. Otherwise, it's just not going to be enough. So knight c4, a4. Shocking? It's not. Why not? Well, it's the Spanish. Spanish often revolves around the a6, b5 pawns, and by trying to soften it. Now, how do you think is best for black to react against this a4 probe? Because there's many ways to play these type of positions. You can go one by one, right? You often consider, okay, can I take, right? Why not ask that question? It's never illegal to ask questions in chess. In fact, that's probably the best way of starting, and that's a very Tal-like thinking as well. Tal likes to actually ask questions before even considering seriously which moves to make. Would we want to take that pawn as black? No, why not?
The take back was the bishop because we need to get our bishop out of the rook's way to make that knight sacrifice for it.
Okay, you're hell-bent on the sacrifices, fine.
And then their a pawn is going to be a target too. So
And the a pawn is going to be a target, yeah. But, okay, and that's actually an important point. What Natasha is making there. If we do this trade, you can clearly see that this is just plain wrong for black. And what makes that important, we kind of know what black definitely shouldn't do. But it's better just, clarify that for yourself, and you never will waste any time considering that move. Okay. So if we're not going to take there, how else can we play the position? B4 normal? Why would you consider B4? I'm asking, I'm playing devil's advocate here. That's it? You're just getting space on the queen side?
Well, because you're also going to isolate on b5.
Okay, so you're saying, well, if I don't do it, you'll get an a file, the pawn gets weaker. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, in fact, was played. B4 was played. However, and this is sort of an interesting thing, keeping the tension often isn't a wrong way of playing chess. In fact, in many cases, it makes sense just to keep it. And why? Well, yes, I give you the open file, but is there anything there that you're attacking? Not really. And this pawn is weak, but by in itself, you are not going to be able to capture it. You will need more pieces to attack that pawn, and even when you capture a pawn, it takes time and effort, and you actually gain some tempes for it for black, and that's how you get some compensation. Now, you lose a pawn, you might as well lose the game, so that's the danger. Now, black actually chose your move, b4. Now, b4 is a sound move, and in some sense, I would even consider the principal decision. Why? You're gaining space, you're using whatever you have to the maximum, and you're saying, well, whatever you're doing with white is nonsense. I'm kind of ignoring whatever you're doing, pushing the pawn, and see how it goes from there. b3. And now, you know, we've been talking about straightforward chess. Shirov also plays the most demanding of the position, meaning he is putting as much pressure on black as he possibly can. a4 put pressure on the pawn and the structure. b3 asks the knight where it's going and fixes the pawn on b3. Now, black has a couple of options. The black knight can go to a3, a5, and b6. Where would you put the knight out of those three options? b6, okay. Why? Why would you choose b6?
Well, a3 loses a pawn,
Mm-hmm.
and a5 basically traps the knight there because it's not particular.
Mm-hmm.
And from b6 we can go to d7 and get a bit some space.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, b6 definitely feels more on the logical side, right? Because the knight would get even closer to that spot on c5 and outpost. Downside, it takes a lot of time. It's a close position, but time is still a thing. And in fact, maybe knight b6, you can also cut it off, like cutting off the support of the b pawn and chasing the knight away. So that's also something you have to contend with. Knight a3. Okay. So there is something between people here. Some people claim, hey, I'm going to win a pawn if you put the knight on a3. And others saying, well, go ahead. Danny is saying, go ahead, please. Take my pawn, please. Why? Why, Danny? Why? Why would you let me take the pawn? Oh, you love bishops. Okay. That's fair. Low light mania. What else does black get apart from the bishops? And we actually talked about that topic just a moment ago. Yeah, white's harmony is a little bit disturbed, but what did black actually get? Black gets the f4 square, exactly. And as I mentioned earlier, this explosion of f5 and undermining with f5 becomes an option that wasn't before. So this actually tempted black to go here. Now the reason why black avoided knight b6, because I will go a5 and undermine this pawn on b4, which is sort of isolated by now. Like you go here, I go after it. And the other thing though, so you don't necessarily have to worry that much with your bishop. Sure, you want to make sure it's defended, but you sometimes can make these type of moves just to stabilize it, or even go knight to e3. You'll see something similar in the game, even though the bishop will move. So b3, black does chooses to go put the knight there. However, white again makes a principled decision. Can you find it? Shirov, and this is actually vintage Shirov. This is not something that you always see from him. But this is what's special. He's always trying to he always tries to look for the most challenging way of playing. He does not take. Yep. Does not take. Does chess and psychology happen? Yes, it does. It happens on Wednesdays. Yes, Danny. I thought you raised your hand.
No.
Oh,
I didn't
okay.
do rook a3.
Rook a3? Well, that's bold. Come on. Take it easy. We're getting there. Take it easy. Yes. There are bishops there, yes, that's correct. Well, we already did not want to cross that knight, because that knight is worthless and weak. And this chess is not for the meek. Therefore, we shall ignore them all and move away from danger. Moving away from stranger danger. Okay. So, first of all, the thing and the reason why we leave this pony on a3 is because that knight does absolutely nothing, right? It looks pretty. Well, but that's only in the case if they get c2. And that's actually sort of the big thing in chess. Having that knight on a3 is not completely unreasonable by black. This is actually how grandmasters duke it out. White says, okay, what you're doing is nonsense. Your knight is going to be bad. And black says, no, 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 you're wrong. My idea is going to trump yours. Because my knights are better than yours. But white says, nah, you're wrong. Now, if knight f4, you sort of always wonder what the fight is all about. I just told you all. It's about the c2 square. Who's going to hold on to it? So, if they do go knight f4, what would be our first thought? You snip that knight immediately. But on principle, you are going to go after those guys. So let's say queen d2, but you'll be like, whoa, 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 bishop f6. But I'll go, whoa, 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 whoa. I will start attacking everybody. I mean everybody. Take the pawn, hit the bishop, hit the knight. So that's one of those things there, which is super important. There is a strategic danger lurking for black. If I win the pawn, it's over. I win everything. It's jackpot for me. So it goes a5. And, it's kind of like both sides going all in. They're like saying, okay, strategically, what I'm doing, I'm a genius. I know what I'm doing here. You have no idea, and I'm going to beat you. Okay. So black claims a5. My knight is a monster. The c2 square is going to be mine, actually. But it is Shirov time. Yeah, everybody put the cards down, but we got to start action. And we got to start acting. Tiny tempo? No more tiny tempos. Only gangster chess from Alexei Shirov. Galkos is correct. If black could get the queen here, get the bishop there, that'd be fantastic. Sadly, for the second player, it is white to move. The knight moves from f1, not gangster enough. Yeah, knight takes e5. Boom. Even at 2700 plus level, mini sacrifices, tricks and traps still work. However, of course, we're talking about Grandmaster chess. It's not that black was like, oh, I blundered this. Of course, black knew that this is going to happen. Goes bishop f6, and this is sort of a sacrifice. So queen takes, bishop takes e5. What black is contending is that sort of like Banco play. Black says, I am going to get an open diagonal for my bishop. I will have the c file. It's going to be good enough. Bishop takes e5, rook a2. Okay, so anytime there is a sacrifice or we win a pawn, depending on the angle, we're playing white. That's sort of an important distinction. For us, we gained a pawn. Let's say we gained a pawn. Doesn't mean that the sacrifice is necessarily wrong. What ought we accomplish in this position? What ought we achieve as white here? What is there to fear? What is there to solve in this position? So, yes, in some respect, black's pieces are in an awkward spot. That bishop on b7 is a little awkward. But you may actually start to wonder if that knight is actually starting to become useful. Yeah, that's a good point. This knight actually starting to put pressure on that square. Like it didn't do that much before. Yeah, so we may want to get rid of this monster on e5. That bishop on e5 might be strong. Now, if white plays f4, does that chase away the banker bishop from the long diagonal? Yay, nay, maybe, no? So let's say white will go f4. I'll go here, for example, f4. Does that change anything? They find a home on c3. At worst, there are some other sneaky ideas, but let's say worst comes to worst, the bishop shows up to c3, all is great for black. This f4 move doesn't really do anything because you're not achieving your goal. Through k2, he goes rook c3. That kind of forces our hand. Queen d1. Now, queen d1, even though looks really, really ugly, but there's an upside. What's the upside? Because it looks like a move that is undeveloping, but actually it's very useful. And it's something that's sort of underestimated by black this whole game. Well, in this case, I over-defend this pawn, this bishop, and what else? Which we already discussed quite a bit. c2 square, exactly. So, as we all said, the fight is a bad dad square on c2. And queen d1, even though it looks like an ugly retreating move, it's actually an important part of white's defense. Queen f6. Okay, and now, so even just by looking at the position, black's pieces improved a great deal, right? Black doesn't have a terrible pawn on e5, but a monstrous bishop just throning there. And it actually starts to feel uncomfortable. And his queen is pretty good. So here Shirov finds an inventive and creative way of shooing Her Majesty away. You have to find a way to chase that mean old lady away from that center square, at least near center square. Well, bishop b2 does not really do that, and in fact might invite some sacrifices. You go here, I can take, you take, I take, and I get the two pieces. And your rook gets a little bit trapped.
What about knight e3, knight g4?
Knight e3, knight g4. Okay. So knight e3, knight g4, definitely one idea. How else? First, let's just try to figure out options of annoying Her Majesty. Okay, that's also an alternative. Knight h2, knight e3, kind of all headed towards g4. Okay, how else? Rook left. Rook e3 and going there. Now, why don't we all jump to conclusions? Why isn't that the first thing we do? Why don't we just say, yes, knight e3, perfect, that's the way we want to go, that's the perfect move. Now, first of all, we're not AI, we care about this game. This game is fun, you don't have to cheat to be good at it. Unlike AI, etc., etc. So, rook e3, knight e3, knight h2. Now, if we go knight e3 and we want to go knight g4, what do you think black would do? h5. Or even bishop c8. If I go rook e3, h5, bishop c8 would be pretty pointless, right? And that's kind of the point. Bishop f4. I do have all these ideas. Actually, I think I have bishop b2 pinning you. So rook c8, bishop d2, and rook f3. And rook e3 is again showing the creative side of Alexei Shirov. He is very inventive when he's attacking, as you'll see. But he's also very inventive when it comes to defense. This is sort of a classic defensive / attacking move. Prepares the idea of bishop to d2, which of course didn't work because of rook takes d3. And it also sets up this idea of chasing the queen away.
Did f4 work instead of e3?
f4? So f4, as we said before, I don't even have to take it. I can just move my bishop away. So f4, the issue a lot of times with this f4 move, you're not accomplishing your goal. So it's not necessarily enough to just do that. So rook e3, and also like one thing that I noticed, whenever you go pawn to f4 is a move that looks fairly aggressive, but it's always double-edged. You are always going to be in constant danger once you push your pawn next to your king. So even if you have the advantage, you're sort of upping the ante, and you may just lose if you make one bad decision. So rook e3 is sort of more circumspect. We are up a pawn, by the way. So we don't have to make a risky move, necessarily. Rook f3, queen d8, and now knight e3. You may notice that the bishop can't go to c8. And if they start pushing their pawns, we invite that happily. And again, notice, once this knight got here, we have billions of pieces controlling the c2 square, practically annulling all the positives of the knight, and he's sort of just stranded there doing absolutely nothing. And actually, this is sort of the way how Grandmaster outplays Grandmaster. They kind of prove that their opponent's play was conceptually wrong. Either they calculate away, calculate deeper, and understand, okay, I know how to play it better than you do, I just understood how to calculate it better, or they actually prove that from a strategic perspective, more of the idea of the position they have is actually way more sound than black's. And in this case, this is an example for that black is actually strategically near losing. Yeah, we're sort of getting into a position where black is drifting into strategically lost position. What's the general plan? So the thing is, once you outplay your opponent, it almost does not need a real plan anymore for white, because black is practically down the a3 knight. That knight is not participating. Also, we have the extra pawn. So not only do we have sort of an extra piece, we're also up a pawn. But okay, the question is still fair and it is pointed. How can we win this position as white? And because of all of these reasons, we have so many ways to win the position. If we would be up a pawn only, it'd be much more difficult. But okay, it's a fair question. I'm asking everyone. Because Echnaton actually asked that question and it's correct. How can we consolidate our advantage? So if we go queen e2, bishop a6, never forget, just because we hold the advantage, our opponent's play still might come into play eventually. Like if I go queen e2, bishop a6, hope the knight comes into play, and then actually black has counterplay that he didn't have before. Trade. Where can we trade? You could go knight g4 for sure. What else can we do? So I can see that once I said, oh, we're near winning, we're getting a bit optimistic. Way too optimistic. We're saying, oh, knight g4, we're going to trade them pieces, we're going to go in for the e5 break. And that's how you lose your position. So let's say queen e2. I'm just going to play a couple of moves. Bishop a6, takes, knight c2, and voila! Already black is getting some chances. Why? Because we completely underestimated our opponent's play. What was the reason black got chances? The c file, right? It was all because of the c file. So you still have to respect your opponent's counterplay, even if it's minuscule. How can we respect it? h4 is not respecting it. Something along the lines of knight c4 or knight c2. You're trading off this piece, and that's actually somewhat shocking, or at least shocking for some. It's a difficult piece to deal with, but with every trade, you're up a pawn. If you can trade everything, it doesn't matter that that knight isn't stuck there anymore. What matters is that you consolidate your advantage and you win in the long run. So knight c2 actually makes sense, and so does knight c4. Okay, so let's see what happened. Knight g4. is to get rid of the bishop. Queen c8. You always look around what your clever little opponent is trying to do. What does black try to do? Of course, rook c1. It's never too late to lose a chess game. It's the stone cold truth. How can we elegantly avoid that trick? And by the way, knight g4 also is trying to get rid of black's strongest piece. Now, of course, we can't take it because of rook f1. Elegant moves. Elegant, Kamsky-like bishop moves. Indeed. Bishop f1. We are already kind of putting enough pressure on these type of pieces. Of course, rook f1 doesn't do anything because we would just capture. They still do it. They still do it. They're looking for counterplay out of desperation. Takes queen d2, bishop a6. But they're looking for counterplay. Now, one of the things that you have to keep in mind that sometimes the best way to defend is to counterattack. And for now, Atalik is on the offensive. Does Shirov like defending this position, just slowly rebuffing the opponent? Nah, of course not. So how can we aggressively play this position? Now, what I mean by this, I mean creating our own ideas in the position. And Shirov's decision here is quite remarkable. It's definitely findable. Knight e3 sort of is defensive, and black does still have a lot of pressure. In fact, black is banking on a slow defensive play by Shirov and sort of hopes that Shirov is forced to defend. Queen g5 might be a problem. It's mate. It's nope, you don't. Knight takes e5. And this is not like your straightforward wow, but the fact is, Shirov is saying, hey, take this piece, take that piece, I don't care. So rook takes f1, d takes e5. But why doesn't he care? Because this is more of like a passive sacrifice. It's not your boom, 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 checkmate type of sacrifice. You'll get a bit of that towards the end. But why do you think he gave up all these pieces? For one, of course, he sort of releases the tension and the king manages to hide the king away on h2. d6. So he's creating a passed pawn. And there is also another idea which makes this sacrifice so wonderful. Well, which one of black's pieces is still kind of useless? The knight. So, and again, and that's sort of the thing that makes Shirov's play so thematic and beautiful. This sacrifice really works because that knight is just so bad. If it was anywhere else on the board, black might be contending to be better. Here, it's not even a question white is dominating, because the rooks will help out with the d-pawn, and there's plenty of targets in black's camp. So let's see what happens. Bishop b7, d7. Of course, you want to rush with that pawn. Promote if you can. Queen d8, rook d3. That's your crown jewel. You better over-defend it. f6, trying to consolidate. Rook d6. Just cutting off counterplay. King f7. Queen e2. Rook c1. And it is time for us to find Shirov's beautiful finishing touch. And I know you all have been desperate to see some beautiful attacking chess from Shirov. Well, here it is. It's coming. Did Mickey Adams get a passed pawn there as well? Well, yes, but it's purely coincidental. It just has to do with pawn structures. Pawn structures like these often have a protected passed pawn or a passed pawn at that. This was, of course, a protected passed pawn. So the reason why white has a crushing attack here, it has to do with the fact that most of black's pieces don't coordinate, and the only ones at defense is the queen and the king. What Shirov is going to use to full effect is that the pawn on d7 is just a single square away from promoting. And white's play is completely forcing. So no such queen g4 business. That's a bit too slow. That's on the slow end. It's indeed queen to h5 check. If we go push the pawn, I take, and there's no question that we're winning. So black goes king to e7. e6 check. If I take,
Queen, e8 check.
yep. And the queen is undefended. And you just take the queen. You can't quite go here because rook e8 and bye-bye. Good night time. But after king takes d7, There's the same goodbye, good night, and bye-bye for black.
Queen F7 check.
Then I run.
And then rook E8.
Okay. That's one version, but Shirov chose the simpler.
Attacking the king.
Rook where? Which square?
D2.
2. Yes. Rook d2. And g, because wherever you go does not matter. You may throw your bishop into the pit of fire, but I'll still capture you, and the game will be over. So it kind of shows that sometimes you have to have a bit of defensive play, understand the nuances of the position like Shirov did, and at the end of the day, then you can go with the breakthrough attack, which Shirov is known for. Thank you so much for coming. Hope you enjoyed this lesson, and see you all in the near future.
America's most exciting double elimination tournament is back for its 4th straight year. The American Cup takes place at the World Chess Hall of Fame in the chess capital of the United States, St. Louis, Missouri. Beginning March 15th, 16 competitors across 2 fields will compete for a $400,000 prize fund, going head-to-head until 2 champions are left standing. Top players, including defending champion Levan Aronian, with past winners Hikaru Nakamura and Fabiano Caruana, are all looking to add a second American Cup title to their names. While rising star Abhimanyu Mishra will be making his American Cup debut. In the women's field, defending champion Alice Lee aims to repeat last year's success, while Irina Krush sets her sights on a 3rd American Cup crown. Meanwhile, U.S. Women's Champion Carissa Yip steps onto the American Cup stage for the first time. Don't miss the action on Monday, March 24th, when the American Cup Blitz brings together eliminated players and local titled competitors for a fast-paced showdown. With fresh faces and established legends, it's the knockout event you won't want to miss. Catch all the action on the St. Louis Chess Club YouTube and Twitch channels.
Typical grandmaster behavior.
All right, from Europe.